This is how I grew my biceps fast. Now, I'm very, very aware that I do not have massive 22-inch Ronnie Coleman looking arms, and I don't have the biggest arms in the world. I am very, very aware of that. But for me, my arms and my upper body in general has always been the biggest weak point. I've always really, really struggled to put mass onto my upper body. And as you can see by this photo here, I've always been a very scrawny and had a very small frame growing up as a kid and even in my late teens. But using these 7 methods I'm about to show you, I was able to take what was a very, very weak point and turn it into more of a stronger point. And I'm hoping this is gonna help you as well. I'm also gonna share my 4 absolute favorite exercises for putting mass onto the biceps that I've been using over the last few years. If I could go back to day 1 in the gym, I would apply these straight away and my arms would probably be twice as big as they are now. So starting off with number 1 is gonna be progressive overload. Now progressive overload is very, very simple and it's exactly what it sounds like. Progressive overload is simply progressing over time. Now the simplest form of progressive overload is to add more weight to the exercise that you're trying to do. The second form of progressive overload is gonna be adding more reps. So let's say you're curling those 10 kilo dumbbells and in 1 month to 2 months time, you can't seem to go up to the 12.5s, but you can get more reps with the 10 kilos. Let's say at the start you were failing around 10 reps, now you're able to get 12 to 15 reps. That is another great way to progressively overload the muscle that you're trying to grow. Another form of progressive overload is volume, AKA the amount of working sets you do for that muscle. So let's say that same example, you're curling the 10s, you're now getting 12 to 15 reps, but you're doing 3 sets per session. If you take that to 4 sets per session or 5 sets per session, or even over a weekly basis, if you're doing 6 sets in the entire week, and then next month you do 7 sets or 8 sets, that is another form of progressive overload because you're doing more volume for the same muscle group. The simplest way to track this is to just track your working sets per muscle group per week. My second tip to put some mass on the biceps is gonna be frequency. Now frequency is very, very simple. It's how many times per week are you hitting the muscle group. So for example, a common mistake that I see is people only training arms once per week. And a bigger mistake is only training them once per week and just tacking them on to the end of another, be good if I could speak, right? Tacking them on to the end of another muscle group. For example, chest and tris, back and biceps. Most of that session, 80%, is gonna be focusing on, the chest, and then they'll put 20% onto the triceps at the end. Same with back and biceps, and then kind of wonder why your arms aren't growing. Now, even if you do have a full arm day where you hit biceps and triceps and that's it, I would still recommend switching or at least giving it a shot where you hit them multiple times per week. So this works really well with like a push-pull legs program, chest, back, legs, shoulders and arms. That's one of my favorite splits to do. Basically any way that you can hit the arms more than once per week. The main reason for this is the arms are unfortunately quite a small muscle group, so they don't need to be destroyed absolutely with a full hour on your biceps. And lastly, it doesn't take a full week for them to recover. So let's say you train chest and triceps on a Monday. You don't need to wait a full week to come and hit your triceps again on a Monday. You could hit them easily 2 to 3 days later. Same with biceps. So I'd highly recommend training them at least twice per week if you want to put some mass on the biceps. Now my third tip is going to be positions of flexion. Positions of flexion basically means overloading the muscle more in a shortened, mid, or lengthened position. This is something that took me way too long to learn. You know when you hear all the bros in the gym or those old school bodybuilders being like, you got to hit it from every different angle, bro. You got to change the angle. They're actually right, and there is some merit to that. And the reason for that is what I just said, positions of flexion. So what this actually means for the biceps is, for example, if you're just doing dumbbell curls, barbell curls, cable curls, you're forever just training the biceps in the mid-range. Now, of course, you're gonna see some results with that, and especially if you're new to the gym, you start training, you're gonna see results no matter what you do, which is the good thing. But if you wanna optimize the results and, like I said, skip all the mistakes that I made, you want to be training the biceps in different positions. So what I highly recommend is making sure that over your week, it doesn't have to be in the same session, but in your weekly program, that you're training the biceps in the shortened position, which basically means training them where your elbow is in front of your shoulder, training them in the mid-range, which is where your elbow is by your side, and then training them in the lengthened position where your elbow is behind your shoulder and your torso. So for an example, some of my favorite ones, shortened position would be like a preacher curl, or a dumbbell or barbell spider curl. Mid-range, super simple, dumbbell curls, barbell curls, cable curls. Behind the body, where your elbow is behind your torso, is gonna be something like an incline dumbbell or an incline cable curl. That way, you're gonna be using the progressive overload, tip 1, you're gonna be using frequency, tip 2, and you're gonna be using positions of flexion, tip 3. So you're gonna be overloading the muscle in its entire range of motion. And to be 100% honest, this just helps with boredom as well, because let's be real, just doing dumbbell curls over and over and over gets kind of boring. Now, tip 4 is gonna be to avoid junk volume. What the hell is junk volume? Here's an easy way to think about it. You know all the sets that you do where you put the weight down and you're kind of like, that wasn't that hard, did that even do anything? I kind of feel like that was a waste. That's junk volume. And you're right, it is a waste. And the reason you want to avoid junk volume is because, number one, you're going to think that you're doing a lot more volume than you are. So you're going to think that you're training a lot harder. You're going to think that you're smashing biceps 10 to 20 sets a week, when really you're probably only getting a handful of really, really good working sets that actually make a difference. So I know what you're thinking, because this is what I was thinking. How do I actually know if I'm doing junk volume or not? Well, the easiest way to think about this, and this is what helped me a lot, is whenever I did a set, I'd put the weight down and I would really, really think, okay, if I had a gun to my head right now, could I get another 3 or 4 more reps out? As a rule of thumb, I like to do anything over 3 to 4. So if I put that weight down, I'm like, yeah, I could have got another 5. That set doesn't count because it was way too easy and it wasn't close enough to failure to actually see any growth. Which leads me to tip number 5, training to failure. Now, if you're not training to failure, in my personal opinion, you're leaving a lot of growth on the table, especially as a natural lifter. And the more years you have under your belt, the harder you have to train and the closer to failure or to failure you actually have to train to see growth. And that's because over time, your muscles and your body adapts to what you're doing. So if you're not pushing the limits, if you're not pushing close to failure, trying to get stronger using progressive overload like we spoke about in tip 1, then it's gonna be very, very hard to see growth. Which leads me to tip number 6, form and technique. Now this one's pretty obvious, but let's be real, it's commonly overlooked and we see it happening in the gym all the time. Very, very simple rule of thumb. If the biceps isn't the only muscle group that's absolutely on fire, burning, it's cramping up, you feel like you want to cry, then adjust your form and technique and you get way better progress. Which leads me to tip number 7 is be insanely consistent and track your progress. Again, this one sounds kind of obvious, but I speak to guys on a daily basis, and when they're asking questions about muscle growth and how can I grow my biceps, I'm asking them about their training, and you know, they're taking a holiday here. Oh, I missed a couple of weeks here because I got sick and work got busy. Oh, and then training was good for a few months, and then I went traveling and just didn't train. If that sounds like you, this is probably the biggest key that you're missing out on. And then of course, when it comes to tracking your progress, this one sounds obvious, but I see so many people in the gym just winging it and also just trying to remember what they've previously done. Now, I promise you, I don't care how good your memory is, you're not gonna be able to remember the exact amount of sets, the exact amount of reps and weight that you're using 1 month ago, 2 months ago, 6 months ago. But if you have a structured program or a logbook or however you want to track your progress, it does not matter. If you can look back and be like, cool, 6 months ago, this is what I was curling, these are how many reps I was doing, these are the amount of sets I was doing, you can simply make sure that you're doing more than that and you'll be able to get so much better progress from that tiny, tiny little bit of extra effort. Yeah, extra effort. And let's be real, it doesn't take much effort to pull out your phone and to plug in a couple numbers in between your sets. They're my 7 tips for growing your biceps fast. Like I said, if I knew this when I first started, I would have made so much faster progress. So hopefully you can take those on board, and you can. But I am gonna give you my 4 favorite bicep exercises that I've been using over the last couple of years to help a lot as well. The first one is gonna be to work the biceps in the shortened position, and it's gonna be a single arm cable preach curl. I personally find there's no other exercise that nails the biceps in the shortened position as good as these do. My second favorite is gonna be a supported dumbbell curl. Now this is an absolute ego destroyer. If you set this up on a lat pull down where you jam your elbows into the back of the pad, this is gonna overload the biceps in the mid-range. And the reason why I like this so much is because driving that elbow back into the pad just keeps everything fixed in place and only your bicep is working. Like I said, they're an ego destroyer. You're gonna have to go lighter on these than you think. My third favorite is gonna be an incline dumbbell or incline cable curl. I personally love the cable curls if your gym has the right setup for these. So for example, if your cable machine is super, super wide, it probably won't work as well. You need one of the ones that's a little bit closer together. And for this, you're training the biceps in the lengthened position. So make sure you keep that elbow fixed behind your body when you're doing curls. My fourth absolute favorite that I pretty much never take out the program is gonna be some form of hammer curl. I'm a big fan of just regular dumbbell hammer curls. The reason why I love these so much is they incorporate a lot of forearm, they train the brachialis, which gives your arms, especially your biceps, that nice thick look. So they're 4 of my absolute go-to. Of course, there's so many more good bicep exercises. Just use those 7 tips. Feel free to incorporate those 4 exercises, and I hope that helps.